Hi, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Ramon's Everything RC Cars. This is the third and last part of the three-part series of the ESC motor installation. Beginners in the hobby could most benefit from this part of the three-part series. Feel free to comment below in the comments section. So this is what the installation looks like after I'm done. I have the motor and I have the ESC installed. Now with the ESC I had to build a plastic plate. I saw other people like JPRC. He actually did some sort of metal plate with other materials. All I did was a plastic plate, and I'll show that to you in a video. And of course, here's the new servo. Now, one problem I had was figuring out how to plug in the ESC and the motor into the receiver. The question was which way to put it in and in what channel. So I wound up putting the motor into channel 2, I believe it was, the ESC in channel 3, then the ESC fan plugs in separately into the top channel, which is also channel 3, and the motor fan, as you see here, is on the very bottom, so all the slots in the receiver are taken up now. Now with the motor fan I did put double-sided tape on so that I can put it on and take it off as needed, because they say you shouldn't use the fans when you're in wet conditions. Another problem I encountered was in what order to put these wires. So I believe at first I had white, red, black. And the directions say it doesn't really matter what order you put it in, and after you do the test, if the wheels go backwards when they should go forwards, then switch any two of the wires. So I chose to switch the black and the red wire, and that fixed the problem. One thing beginners need to know is that the ESC does not come with this connector. The ESC actually comes with the two wires at the end of which are bare wires. The manufacturer put a little solder on the end of the wires. So that meant I had to do all this research, tons and tons of research and time on how to do a simple solder and what equipment to buy, etc. So I had to go buy a soldering tool. It was pretty cheap, like $25–30 from Home Depot, 40-watt soldering tool. But there was a long learning curve. So for instance, it took me 1 hour to solder this one connection. And that's a conservative estimate. It probably took me longer than that. Whereas experienced people can do it in 5 minutes. But this was my very first soldering job, and I think I did a rather good job. So just look up online on how to solder Traxxas connectors. There's also a great deal of information you can get on YouTube about different types of connectors, so you really have to decide on which connector you're going to use. And I was totally confused. Here I am as a novice, first timer doing these big major upgrades, and I'm having to choose which connector to use. Well, I don't know which connector to use. So somebody recommended I just go with the Traxxas connector. There was another connector he recommended I could look into, but I just decided the Traxxas connector because my battery already had a Traxxas connector on it. So the test of the battery connection to the ESC was a success. So I did a good job with the soldering job. But when I did the test, I flipped it over and I ran the wheels, I ran the motor, and the wheels were making the Stampede shake like crazy. And I mean like crazy. That led me to wanting to balance the wheels, because obviously the wheels were out of whack somehow, so I figured it was the balancing. Turned out, after doing, again, a lot of research, a ton of research, I figured out that the wheels actually had water in them from previous runs that I've done with the Stampede. I had to do tons of research yet again on how to get the darn water out. Turns out to be easy, but I don't like drilling holes. Not sure if you can see this hole. That white speck is a hole. So I wound up draining the tires. And I didn't get all of the water out, but I got most of it out. And doing so stabilized the wheels immeasurably. I mean, they almost didn't shake at all. But then I still wanted to find out how to balance the tires, because the tires are still kind of wobbly. And even when I do get all the water out, there's going to be a little bit off. So then I had to do still a lot more research on how to balance the wheels. So what this means is my Stampede wheels still aren't balanced because I don't have a balancer. You need to buy or construct a wheel balancer. And as far as the research I've done so far, just buy yourself a balancer. I got materials from Home Depot, and I've thought about it, and there really is no easy way to make a wheel balancer. So just go out and buy one. Some of them are cheap. The Traxxas sells one for like $15. Probably another 10 or 15 in shipping, but that's still cheaper than some of the other wheel balancers on the market. So finally, after all this research, all these things that I did to the Stampede, I had a chance to test the Stampede outside with the new motor. I wanted to see what kind of power it had, and wanted to see if the motor got hot, etc., etc. When running the car on the street, I did notice a lot more power coming from the motor. However, I thought I heard some gears grinding. And the more I ran it, the less power it had. So I knew something was wrong. And I started bringing it back. There was a real car on the street coming towards the Stampede RC car. And then the Stampede gave out on me. It just didn't go. I heard the motor churning away. That to me meant that the pinion somehow got disconnected from the spur gear. So I had to walk out into the middle of the street while the driver in the car patiently waited for me to retrieve the Stampede from the street. This led me again to do a lot of research. Let me tell you, as a beginner, I'm really surprised at how complicated RC cars really are. I mean, there's part after material. I mean, a lot of things you have to know to really keep your RC cars in good shape. So I did a lot of research about pinions, and I found out that pinions are made with different materials depending on the manufacturer that makes it. That makes it hard. Which material is best? I don't know. I'm a beginner at this. I'm not sure which one is best. Is it even advisable for me to get the best pinion as a beginner who's not going to be racing on professional circuits? I don't know. The pinions also depend on the number of teeth they have. The Stampede comes with the stock 32 pitch, 9 pin or 9 tooth pinion. If you don't know what that is, look it up. Do your research on YouTube and you'll learn what the pitch means and what the number of teeth do. I also found out what the roll of the spur is, and apparently it isn't as direct a change as the pinion is, so that if you change out the spur, it isn't as much of a change in the driving of the RC car. Also, where would I buy quality pinions? That is, a pinion that wouldn't bust on me after 1 minute of running the car. I don't know. I mean, I had to do the research. And this research also led to a video of how to thoroughly clean the front and rear gears. I think they call them differentials. So you can actually take this back part apart and this front part apart. And within those gears are yet more gears. And some of them are filled with thick oils. Some of them are filled with thin oil. I mean, it's quite complicated. I'll put a link to that particular video in the description below. But I also found out that the shocks by themselves are a whole scholarly research study in themselves. I mean, these are oil-filled shocks, and there's a particular way of filling the oil so that there's no air when you cap it. There are different oil weights. There's a piston in there with holes in it. You could get pistons with a different number of holes to tighten or loosen the shocks. I mean, there's a huge amount of information here. And I still haven't been able to do a full, complete test of the ESC motor installation because there's no pinion. I'm still waiting for the pinion. And incidentally, I heard that the Robinson Racing pinions are the best. And they're still fairly inexpensive. It's what, like $2.50 for each pinion. This made me come up with ideas for future RC car videos. So in the future, you'll see actual runs of different pinions that I put into here. Because I did look for YouTube videos of people switching out the pinions just to see what the difference really is, but I didn't find any. I mean, maybe you know of some. If you do, please comment in the comment section below. So there you have it. This is the end of the series on the ESC motor installation. In future videos, I will show you test runs and the difference between the pinion gears. Thanks for watching.